There's this thing that happens in the body sometimes, right after something good. You get the news you were hoping for, the promotion, the acceptance, the moment where someone finally sees you, finally says yes, finally shows up the way you needed them to. And for a second, maybe two, there's warmth, relief, something loosening in your chest. But then, almost before you can register it, something else starts. A tightness in your throat, a strange restlessness in your hands, a thought that arrives uninvited, something like, this won't last, or they don't really mean it, or something's about to go wrong. And before you know what you're doing, you're picking a fight. Not about anything real, not about anything that matters. But suddenly the dishes aren't done right. Suddenly you're annoyed at how they chew. Suddenly you're replaying something they said 3 weeks ago and you need to bring it up right now. Right now, in the middle of what should have been a good night. And later, maybe hours later, maybe days, you look back and think, why did I do that? Why do I always do that? I've been thinking about this pattern for a while. Not in a clinical way. Not like a researcher studying behavior from the outside. More like someone sitting with their own confusion, trying to understand something that doesn't make sense on the surface. Because on the surface, it's backwards. Good things happen. And we respond by creating bad ones. Closeness arrives. And we push it away. Someone loves us well. And we test them, provoke them, make it harder for them to stay. It doesn't make sense. Unless you look underneath. There's something about joy that feels dangerous to certain nervous systems. I don't mean dangerous in the way we usually use that word. Not like a threat, more like unstable, unpredictable. Like standing on ground that might shift. For some people, happiness is unfamiliar territory, not because they've never experienced it, but because when they did, when they were young, when they were forming, it didn't last. It got interrupted. It came with a cost. Maybe the good moments in their childhood were followed by chaos. Maybe love was unreliable. Maybe every time things felt safe, something would crack open and prove that safety was an illusion. So the body learned something. It learned that joy is a warning. That closeness is the thing that comes before loss. That if something good is happening, something bad must be coming, and maybe it's better to get there first, to control the fall, to be the one who breaks it before it breaks you. I'm not saying this to excuse anything. Hurting people isn't okay just because the wound underneath is old. But I think there's something important in understanding this. In recognizing that the person who starts a fight after good news isn't crazy, isn't impossible, isn't doing it to be cruel. They're doing it because their system doesn't know what to do with peace. And here's the part that gets complicated. The part that makes me pause when I think about it. Because this pattern doesn't just hurt the person doing it. It exhausts the people around them. It wears down relationships. It teaches partners and friends and family members that nothing will ever be enough, that even when they show up right, something will still go wrong. And eventually, people leave. Not because they don't love the person, but because they're tired. Because they can't keep offering closeness only to have it rejected, punished, turned into conflict. Which, of course, confirms what the person feared all along. That love doesn't stay. That good things end. That they were right not to trust it. There's a kind of silence that happens around this pattern. Not the silence of someone withdrawing to manipulate. Not the silence of punishment or control. A different kind. The silence of someone who doesn't know how to explain what's happening inside them. Because how do you say, I'm scared of how much I love you, so I started a fight about the laundry? How do you say, that compliment you gave me made me feel seen, and being seen makes me feel like I'm about to be abandoned, so I needed to push you away before you could leave? It sounds insane when you put it into words, so most people don't. They just feel the chaos rising and act on it, and then sit in the aftermath wondering what's wrong with them, wondering why they keep destroying things they want. Sometimes I think about how exhausting it must be to carry that inside you, to have your own nervous system working against your happiness, to watch yourself ruin things and not know how to stop. And I think about how exhausting it is to love someone like that too. To give and never know if it's landing. To walk on eggshells even during good times, maybe especially during good times, because you've learned that good times are when the explosion happens. There's grief on both sides of this pattern. And I don't think either side is the villain. There's a question I keep circling back to, not an answer, just a question. What would it take for the body to learn a new story? What would it take for joy to stop feeling like a threat? I don't have a clean response. I don't think there is one, but I've noticed that it starts with recognition. With the moment where someone looks at their own pattern and says not with shame, just with honesty, oh, I do this. This is something I do. And then, maybe, with curiosity instead of judgment. Why do I do this? What am I afraid of? What was I taught about love that made me believe it comes with a price? There's something about naming the pattern that shifts it, not fixes it, not erases it, but makes it slightly less automatic. Because once you see it, you can catch it. Not always, not every time, but sometimes, right before you pick the fight, you can feel what's actually underneath. The fear, the old wound, the part of you that's still waiting for the other shoe to drop. And maybe, in that moment, you can choose something different. Not perfectly, not gracefully, but consciously. I think about what it might look like to love someone who has this pattern, and I don't think it means accepting being hurt. I don't think it means becoming a target for someone's unprocessed fear. Boundaries matter. Self-protection matters. You're allowed to say, I love you, and I won't be your emotional punching bag. But I also wonder if there's a way to hold both things. To see the pattern, to name it gently, to say, I notice you're picking a fight. I wonder if something else is happening. Not as a therapist, not as a rescuer, just as someone who understands that love can be terrifying. That safety can feel like danger. That sometimes the people who push us away are the ones who want us to stay the most. I keep thinking about this moment, the moment right after the good news. That tiny window where everything could go either way, where the warmth is still there, still possible, still within reach, and then the choice conscious or not to let it in or to shut it down. I don't know how to make that choice easier, but I think there's something powerful in knowing it exists, in recognizing that it's not random, that the chaos after joy isn't a mystery, it's a map, a trace of something older, a story the body is telling because it never got to tell it any other way. And maybe understanding the story doesn't fix everything, but maybe it's a start. There's one more thing I've been sitting with. This question of repair. Because the pattern doesn't have to be permanent. It just feels that way when you're inside it. When you've watched yourself do the same thing again and again and again. But people do change. Not through willpower. Not through shame. Through something softer than that. Through relationships that stay even when the pattern shows up, through moments of being caught gently mid-spiral, through the slow, exhausting, unglamorous work of learning that love can be safe. That joy doesn't always lead to loss. That being happy doesn't mean being vulnerable to destruction. It takes time. It takes more patience than most people have. But it happens. I've seen it happen. If you've recognized yourself in any of this either as the person who starts the fights, or as the person who weathers them, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just here to say, you're not alone in this. And the pattern makes sense, even when it doesn't feel like it does. And there's nothing wrong with you for wanting something to change. If you want more reflections like this, slow, uncertain, trying to make sense of the strange ways we love and fail to love, consider subscribing. Not for answers, just for the company.